Hi guys, welcome to another video. My name's Natalie and I'm an artist living and working in Tokyo. So today I'm going to I thought to challenge myself. I got this idea from this book that I have called Just Add Watercolour by Helen Birch, and it's full of different techniques and ideas for watercolour painters to be inspired by. So I was inspired to do paint a daytime scene and a nighttime scene of the same thing. So I had to go to, so I went to the random park and I took a photo of this little, like, I don't know what you call it, hut thing type deal. I have no idea what you call this sort of thing. But I took a photo of it in the day and the night. My camera quality isn't very good, so I couldn't really get all the detail, but anyway, that's fine. So in today's video, I'm just going to show you step by step my thought process and how I came about painting it. And just warning you, I'm actually never painted or like hardly ever had any practice painting landscapes before. It's not really my forte. I mainly paint like small objects or still life stuff that is very close to my face and very detailed, like fruit or foods. But I've never painted something so far away like how I'm doing now. So what I'm doing now is that I'm just drawing out some guidelines for me, because what I'm trying to do is I'm using I'm going to be sketching down the initial lines and drawings onto my watercolor paper and with the pencil, an HB pencil, and I just use the guidelines to help me like get the idea of proportions and all that stuff. And then now I'm going to be drafting out all the lines, the guidelines, the proportions and everything on the paper. I'm using a cold press Canson watercolor paper, I think, and it's A3 size. So this part's quite boring, so I'm just going to fast forward it to the next part. And for the next stage, now I'm just going to try my best to just sketch out the initial line art, I guess, so just to get all the shapes and details in first. I'm using an HB pencil and I'm just drawing very, very lightly. So lightly, you probably can't see on camera right now, but I can see. So just draw. The reason why I draw so lightly with the pencil is because I want to be able to rub it away after I apply watercolor paints, because once you apply watercolor paints, it's quite hard to then rub away the pencil markings that you've made. And if you draw with a heavy hand, it's almost nearly impossible to completely rub away. If you're worried about that, you can also use a 2H pencil. A 2H pencil is like a harder pencil, and it's usually used for architects' drawings, drawing buildings and landscapes. The charcoal doesn't come off the lead that easily. You have to press quite hard in order to see it. And because it's very light, it's very useful for drawing for watercolors, but I don't have one on hand with me right now, so I'm not using it. So after much tea later, I'm just going around and drawing all the measurements and like being careful about like proportions, and I'm using a ruler as a guide to just quickly sketch it down. In total, the sketching time took about, I think, an hour to do, just mainly because there's so much detailing. And I wanted to make sure I got all the proportions right, so there wasn't anything too like not true to the photograph that I'm using. The photograph I took by myself, so it's my own image that I used. So now that I've finished the sketch, I've just shown you a close-up. What I'm applying to the paper now is masking fluid, and what masking fluid does, it repels the watercolor paints. I just want to paint it on the areas I want to keep white. So if I want to keep the paper white, you can buy masking fluid in any paint shop, and it takes just a couple of minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes to dry, depending on what type of masking fluid that you're using. So now that it's dry, it's ready to have the paint applied on top. So what I'm doing right now is I've already started applying the watercolor paint, and I'm just doing a very light wash with quite a bit of water on the paintbrush all over the night sky, just to get like the initial base paint down, because with watercolors what you're meant to do is you're supposed to layer the paints on top of each other, usually from lightest paint to darkest paint. With other types of paints, I think it's usually dark to light or whatever you want really, because it's just layers, but watercolor tends to mix a bit, and it reactivates if you add water or add more paint to it after it's dried, so you have to be very, very careful. I noticed this paper was very easy to draw on, because in the next video you'll see like me drawing the daytime. The Canson paper is very easy to draw on, like with the pencil, but when you add paper, I think because it's a bit dry, it doesn't absorb the paint as well as this other type of paper, which I'll show you in the next clip. So yeah, I'm just painting right over the masking fluid, and you'll notice that the fluid doesn't soak up the paint, so it's actually just repelling all the water in the paint. So that's the fact that I want to get. So after I've applied the initial wash of paint, I'm going to go in and add a bit more detail. So I'll add light tones and then mid-tones and then dark tones. So I'm just going to speed this video up a bit so it's a bit easier to see what I'm doing. Now I'm adding like a slightly darker tone of blue just to get the night sky in. And if you look at the sky at the night, it's not perfectly black. It's actually a bunch of blue and like reds and really dark greens, but very high intensity. So I'm using but now I'm using just blue, because in the photograph the night sky was very blue. But if I want to make it a bit darker, I would actually add a bit of red or magenta, because red and magenta sort of makes the blue colour purple, and that's kind of, it also gives you the darker effect. If it gets too purple, then I'd go back and add a little tiny bit of yellow, and just slowly work my way around there. And if it goes a little bit more green and not to the colour that I want, then I add, or a brown colour, then I add a bit more blue again. So just sort of, that's how I mix colours generally. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm also doing this effect that I use called, what's it called again? Oh, I'm using this effect called glazing. And what you do is you just dry after you've painted and your brush is still wet, you dry your brush and then you go back in and you sort of blend the colours together. It only works if your brush is dry and you're working on already wet paper. I think it's hard to explain, but if you look at glazing tutorials online, you'll sort of understand what I mean. And in any parts through this video, I'm just going to, if I'm not talking, I'll play some background music so you're just not listening to silence while you're watching the video. Waiting to dry, I've gone ahead and got painted the daytime scene. So you can see in the photograph that I've got the daytime scene in the image. I mean the photograph. I've got the photograph in the screen, and I've gone ahead and I've done a light wash. I was thinking of using a light box to retrace the same image as I did for the night scene, but the angle isn't exactly perfect in the photograph as to the daytime and the nighttime scene, if that makes any sense, because I guess I wasn't standing in the exact spot. Well, I tried as much as I could when I was taking the photographs at both times of the day. So I just had to redraw and sketch everything again. The watercolour paper that I'm using for the daytime scene is called, let me just try and find it. The watercolour paper that I'm using for the daytime scene is actually the St Cuthberts Mill Saunders Waterford, or is it Watford? Waterford series, classic watercolour paper, aquarelle. And it's cold press white paper. It's not pure white, it's kind of like an off-white, but I found this paper, it's really good quality, and it really works well with glazing, and if you're doing like wet on wet watercolor painting, it's just really good. I love this paper, but it's sort of like all the papers are stuck together, so when you're trying to like remove a paper, it's very hard and you might rip your painting, so be careful. Anyway, so what I've done is I've added a light wash. And what I'm doing now is I'm trying to get the right colour. So it's slightly off screen, but I'm sort of using another piece of paper to sort of test out what colours I want to add to the painting. Anyway, so I've waffled on for long enough, and I'm just going to let you watch the rest of the painting as it progresses on, and yeah. Okay, so enjoy the rest of the video. So now that I've painted all the details on the daytime image and that's waiting to dry, I've gone back into the nighttime painting and I'm rubbing away all the masking fluid tape or masking fluid, and I'm going to finish painting the nighttime one. And finally, here's the results. So I hope you like this painting tutorial, kind of a tutorial, more like walk through, talk through. I'm not sure how I'm going to end up labeling this a video, but if you like this kind of video, please leave a comment down below saying why you liked it, and if you didn't like it, also say why you didn't like it so I can get some feedback and hopefully improve my video content and all that stuff. And again, thank you so much for watching even to the end of the video, because I know it was very long and I really appreciate it. So see you in next week's video. Bye.